Hey everybody, so do you need to pay closing costs? Are closing costs necessary? Well, I'm going to tell you today, we're going to go over everything you need to know about closing costs, whether they're necessary or not, and how you can either know what they're for in order to assist the purchase of your property and the sale going through, or how you can actually save that money. My name's Justin with Justin Uding Team Real Estate. Let's talk about this. I'm going to tell you folks, we have seen more adjustments and questions and amounts of closing costs than I have ever seen in my career. In fact, I think the biggest closing costs offer we got is they were requesting $35,000 in closing costs. Sounds enormous, and truth be told, it is enormous. But let's talk about it and why you should be educated in regards to what does that go to and why is it important. Folks, I want to kind of just gear your direction towards, because this had come up a lot. And so when we were looking at these as options, I wanted to refer to something that maybe was a legal document that kind of helped us, that would help you if you're putting things together. And frankly, there's 87 forms in the Utah real estate forms, and this is one of those kind of buried forms. And it's just basically referred to as a closing cost addendum. But I want to read you a quick blurb about it and why you should kind of be aware of it, because there's two ways that somebody writes it. Now let's just say that $35,000 in closing costs. Now if I write, I request you seller to pay $35,000 in closing costs and end it, it's like, well, what does that encompass, right? Whereas if I write that, I will give you up to $35,000 in closing costs. So let's consider the following. Folks, when you pay for closing costs, this is essentially what you're paying. And this is why I'd recommend the closing cost addendum, so that people know what it could be used for. Also, it specifies, because a closing cost can be determined in a number of different ways. So let's just go through this addendum very quickly, okay? Number one, seller's contribution to closing costs is a number one item on this closing cost addendum. And it says seller agrees to contribute a settlement in the amount of X amount to be applied to the buyer's mortgage or buyer's discretion for the following. So it kind of stipulates those details. Number one is they can do a permanent reduction or a temporary reduction in the mortgage interest rate. What does that mean? Folks, there's a couple things. A temporary reduction is what we refer to as a mortgage buy down. Sometimes, for example, interest rate 7, they're doing a 2-1 buy down. We're going to take it down. They're going to do a 5% rate in the first year, 6% rate in the second year, and then it adjusts back to the going rate. Okay, that's a temporary buy down. A permanent buy down, hey, I'm going to use that money and I'm going to take it from the 7% rate and I am going to purchase it down to a 6.25% interest rate on a 30-year fix for the life of the loan. And so we're essentially doing something where they're buying it down, not temporary, but it's fixed toward the mortgage interest rate. Now, the second part of it says the following. Listen, it can go towards mortgage financing costs. What are mortgage financing costs? Think about this. It may be the points that a lender is charging, that the loan officer is charging for it. For example, $500,000 loan, lender is charging 2 points, that's 10 grand right there in order for them to do the loan. What we typically see, just as a quick note, on a loan officer, they make their money in their fees and in their rate. What I will tell you is a normal loan officer is typically making a point up front in their 1 point origination fee, and they typically make a point in the back end by the interest rate. What does that mean? The going interest rate is 6.875. They're charging a 7.125 rate. They're making it in the rate also. Folks, that's not a bad thing. That's how they live. I'm just saying, know that if you are shopping interest rates, as a note, shop it on the same day with multiple lenders so that you get a consistent fee and a consistent rate, because rates change every single day, okay? And then the following thing is closing costs. So that money can go towards what those costs are. Now, closing costs, again, can be anything from appraisals. It can be, we talked about different points, which is obviously part of the mortgage rates, but it's also considered a closing cost. They could be where, different people have different types of loan scenarios depending on the lender that they're using, okay? There's a part D is prepaids and escrows. Sometimes when we're dealing with prepaids, or escrowing money, that money can be used toward the prepaids. And I guess I just want to say we're really not having any prepaids that we've really had that we run into very often, but sometimes if they're escrowing funds, that money is held, and sometimes that's money used towards different things in the property. A lot of lenders don't love to see that, but again, they could use it toward it if the lender is permitting it to be used. And then it just says any unused portion of the seller's contribution may, at buyer's option, be used to reduce the purchase price. So this is saying, hey, we're going to use the whole thing, right? If we're able to. Most forms in regards to if they don't use it all, they are required to give you the money back. But that's why sometimes we'll say, hey, you have up to this amount, so whatever you don't use, obviously, it will be refunded back to the seller. Closing costs in general, the other part you need to know about closing costs, it does help a buyer get into a home. Some people they were stipulated that they could only afford a 6.5% interest rate at this price. You help them buy down the rate, they may be able to go up to your price. So just know it's not a bad thing to kind of give a lending hand in order to facilitate a sale. It shouldn't be at your detriment, but I think that's where it's kind of what real estate is where a buyer and a seller meet. So just know that sometimes if we're really like, I'm not paying closing costs, and I'm not going to help them with that, you may limit your amount of buyers that can actually get into your property. And we're just seeing more of that than we've ever seen. But that's where we're seeing a lot of sales, facilitating sales, people transacting, and it's a positive thing. And so just know, even on my own personal properties, if people are asking for closing costs, I'm looking at, a couple things. What is the market? Is it standard? Is it going to help them to facilitate the sale? And frankly, is it going to be beneficial? Because the next person, if I reject that person, the next person may need it, and the next person after that, and the next person after that. So anyway, hope this helps. If you have a question about closing costs, fees, costs, prices, all those things, please let us know. We're here to help, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.